The arena was alive with sound. Thousands of alien voices roared together, their strange tones mixing into a single wall of noise that made the air vibrate. High above, banners of every species' colors rippled under the artificial wind. The fighters from across the galaxy stood proudly on the open stage, some waving to the crowd, others flexing their muscles or showing their weapons. They were free to move, free to stand where they wanted. All of them except one. In the very center of the arena floor stood a tall, transparent cage made of glowing blue energy bars. Inside it, a single human stood motionless. Her name was Kara Voss. She was young, not much older than 20, but there was something in her eyes that didn't match her age calm. Sharp focus, and the stillness of a predator. Around her cage, armed guards with sleek plasma rifles stood in a perfect circle. No other fighter had guards. No other fighter needed them. The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers. His tone full of excitement, but hiding a note of tension. He called out the names of the competitors one by one, and each fighter stepped forward to greet the crowd. Cheers erupted for the reptilian warlord from Zathar, the 8-armed duelist from Vega, and the massive armored beast from the moon of Crag. When he reached Kara's name, his voice stumbled for just a moment before recovering. And, representing the planet Earth, Kara Voss. The crowd reacted strangely. A few clapped politely. Others stayed silent. Some even hissed in disapproval. No one knew what to expect from the human. Many had never even seen one before. The tournament officials claimed the cage was for safety and tradition. But everyone in the stands could feel the truth. They were afraid. Kara's hands rested loosely at her sides. She didn't try to rattle the cage or shout at the crowd. She simply looked around, studying the fighters, the guards, the judges in their high seats. She noticed how the officials avoided meeting her eyes. She noticed the way the guards kept their weapons slightly raised, as if they expected her to make a sudden move. She noticed how even the other competitors wouldn't stand too close to her cage, as if she might reach through the glowing bars and drag them inside. She took a slow breath. The air tasted strange, too clean, too artificial. Every sound carried across the arena. She could hear the clinking of armor from across the stage, the soft hum of the energy bars, the uneven heartbeat of the guard to her left. She could even hear the faint whine of the hovering camera drones circling above her. The opening ceremony continued. The crowd laughed when the insectoid fighter from Varnax performed a dance. They roared when the 4-legged brawler from Gore smashed a practice dummy into splinters. But when the cameras focused on Kara, the laughter stopped. Smile or wave. She simply looked straight into the lens, unblinking, as if staring directly into the living rooms of everyone watching the broadcast across the galaxy. Some viewers leaned closer to their screens without knowing why. Others turned away, unsettled by her gaze, in the front row of the audience. A young alien boy tugged at his father's arm and whispered, "Why is she in the cage?" The father didn't answer right away. He just watched Kara, his face tight. Finally, he said quietly, "Because a long time ago, another one like her stood here, and the galaxy has never forgotten." No one mentioned that story in the official broadcast. The tournament had tried to erase it from memory, but some remembered. And some, like the father in the front row, knew that the cage wasn't to protect anyone from her fist sit, was to protect them from something far more dangerous. Kara tilted her head slightly, catching the faintest trace of movement in the crowd. Someone in the high seats had turned away, speaking into a hidden communicator. She didn't know what they were saying, but she could guess. They were making plans. They were always making plans. She had seen it in their eyes the moment she arrived. The announcer shouted for the first match to begin. The fighters left the stage one by one, heading to their assigned areas. Kara stayed in the cage as her guards closed in around her. One of them keyed a control on his wrist, and the bars flared brighter for a moment. The hum deepened, a warning that the field was now at full power. The crowd's roar softened into a low murmur. The sound felt heavier now, less like excitement, and more like waiting. Everyone was wondering the same thing when the cage finally opened for her first fight. What would happen? Kara's lips curved into the smallest smile, one that barely touched her eyes. She didn't need to answer the question. She would let them find out for themselves. When they did, they might wish the cage had never been opened at all. Crowd's noise rolled like thunder through the arena, shaking the air inside Kara's cage. She stood perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the massive gate across from her. Beyond it waited her first opponent. The announcer's voice echoed, stretching out every word as if to build suspense. From the moon of Crag, the Bonebreaker Varg. The gate slammed open with a hiss, and the ground seemed to tremble. A figure stepped forward, towering over 3 meters tall, its thick armor plates grinding against each other. Its 4 eyes glowed a pale yellow, locked straight on Kara. 2 massive tusks curled upward from its jaw, and each of its hands could crush a skull without effort. The Bonebreaker's name was well earned. The crowd erupted, shouting Varric's name. The beast stomped forward until it reached the entrance of the cage and stopped. The energy bars cast a faint blue light on its armored hide. Breathing slowed, his tusks twitched. For a long, strange moment, he didn't move. The announcer's voice cracked slightly. Competitor, enter the cage. But Varric stayed where he was, staring at Kara, his claws flexed. His gaze shifted from her eyes to her hands, then to her feet, as though he was measuring something. The crowd began to murmur in confusion. One of the judges leaned forward in his seat. Get in there, he barked into the cum system. A guard stepped up and whispered urgently to Varric, but the Bonebreaker growled low in his throat. The sound wasn't anger, it was caution. The kind of sound a predator makes when it realizes it might not be the most dangerous thing in the room. Kara raised one eyebrow. She hadn't moved a muscle, but she could see it the tiny hesitation in his stance, the way his weight shifted, slightly backward. She'd seen it before, on Earth, when large animals sensed something they couldn't explain. They didn't call it fear, but their bodies knew to step away. Finally, with a grunt, Varric stepped into the cage. The bars shimmered and sealed shut behind him. The announcer wasted no time. Begin? Varric lunged forward with terrifying speed for a creature his size. His first blow crashed toward Kara's head, heavy enough to break bone on contact. She wasn't there when it landed. In one smooth motion, she sidestepped, her movements so fast the cameras almost missed it. The strike hit empty air, and Varric stumbled half a step. Before he could recover, Kara struck, not with brute force, but with precision. Her palm slammed into a joint between his armored plates. The impact made Varric freeze for a fraction of a second. Then she twisted, hooked her leg behind his, and used his own weight to send him crashing to the floor. The crowd gasped. No one had ever seen the Bonebreaker fall like that. Varric roared and pushed himself up, but Kara was already moving. She struck again, this time at his ribs where the armor was weakest. The sound was sharp, an ugly armor cracking. Varric's movements slowed, his breathing turned heavy. She didn't rush for a killing blow. She simply kept hitting the exact same weak points, forcing him down, step by step. After less than a minute, Varric's tusks lowered toward the floor. His 4 eyes blinked twice in slow surrender. The announcer's voice was tight. Winner. Kara Voss of Earth. The cage bars powered down, but no one in the crowd cheered. The silence was thick, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Even the judges exchanged uneasy looks. Kara stepped out of the cage without looking back at Varric. She could feel the eyes on her from every corner of the arena, some filled with curiosity, others with unease. And in the farthest judges' box, she saw one alien official lean toward another and whisper something. She couldn't hear the words, but she recognized the tone. It was the same tone people used when they realized they had underestimated the danger. The lights in the arena dimmed to a low golden glow as the next round approached. Kara sat in the small waiting chamber behind her cage, her hands resting on her knees, her breathing calm. The sound of the crowd outside came through as a constant. Like a storm far away. She knew her next match was only minutes away, but she also knew something was wrong. It started with voices low. hurried whispers echoing from the corridor outside her chamber. Kara leaned slightly toward the bars, letting the sounds carry to her ears. "Make her lose," one voice hissed. "No matter what it takes. She's too fast." "That crag brute didn't even touch her," another replied, nervous. "Then we give her something that will." The council approved it. "The crowd will think it's just another match." Footsteps followed, fading away, replaced by the faint buzz of a security lock disengaging. Kara stayed still, her face unreadable, but her heartbeat slowed instead of quickened. She wasn't afraid. She was curious. Moments later, the announcer's voice boomed again, louder than usual, as though trying to mask something. "For our next fight, Earths, Kara Voss versus the champion of the Shadow Pits." The crowd erupted. Kara had never heard the name before, but the way the audience reacted told her enough this champion was no ordinary competitor. Cage bars powered down with a hiss. She stepped forward into the arena, scanning for her opponent. The gate across from her slid open, but instead of a fighter walking in, a large transport crate rumbled forward. The metal door slammed to the ground, and something stepped out. It was not a warrior. It was not even a sentient being. It was a creature twice her height, with limbs too long for its body, skin like armored stone, and a jaw full of jagged teeth. Its eyes burned a dull red. Around its neck was a thick control collar humming with energy. The crowd cheered at the spectacle. But Kara saw the truth immediately. This wasn't a fair fight. This thing was bred for one purpose: to kill humans. The announcer gave the signal. The beast moved instantly, faster than its size suggested, its claws slamming toward her with a sound like tearing metal. Kara spun to the side, her boots sliding on the arena floor. She didn't strike right away. She studied it, the way its joints bent, the pattern of its breathing, a slight pause before it swung again. The beast roared, charging. Kara stepped, in close instead of back, slipping under its swing and slamming her palm into the control collar. Sparks jumped, and the creature howled in confusion. She used the moment to move behind it, hooking her arm around one of its legs and twisting. Sharply, the leg buckled. The crowd's cheering shifted to shouts of surprise. The creature tried to turn, snapping its jaws, but Kara had already moved again, striking the same damaged joint over and over. Its roars turned into panicked screeches. Then, with a final twist, she sent the beast crashing onto its side. It lay there, breathing heavily, unable to rise. Kara stepped back, letting it live. She could have finished it, but she didn't. The silence in the arena was heavy now. She could feel the unease rolling through the stands. In the shadows of the judges' box, two officials leaned close to each other, whispering urgently. And somewhere in the crowd a murmur started, growing louder with each passing second. "She fights like the first one," someone said. Kara didn't know who the first one was yet, but from the way the judges avoided her eyes, she knew. She was going to find out. The arena was almost empty now, the crowd gone, and the lights dimmed to maintenance level. Kara sat alone in the holding area. Her cage powered down for the night, but still closed, humming faintly. The day's fights replayed in her mind, not because they were difficult, but because of the way the officials reacted. They weren't just watching her, they were watching for something. A faint shuffle of footsteps broke the silence. She turned her head, expecting a guard. Instead, a small, stooped alien in a faded maintenance uniform stepped into the light. His skin was pale and cracked, his eyes clouded with age. He glanced nervously over his shoulder before shuffling closer to her cage. "You don't know me," he said in a low, gravelly voice. "But I knew the first one." Kara's gaze sharpened. "The first what?" The old alien reached into his coat and pulled out a small, dented device, no bigger than a fist. "He told me to give this to the next one who fights like him." Before she could ask more, he slid the device between the bars. She caught it. In one hand, its weight unexpectedly heavy. The alien gave her a quick, almost fearful look, then turned and shuffled away without another word. Kara turned the device over, finding a worn activation stud. She hesitated for only a moment before pressing it. A faint hum filled the air, and then a figure appeared, holographic, flickering, but unmistakably human. He was older than her, with a scar running from his temple to his jaw. His expression was grim, but his eyes were sharp, alive. When he spoke, his voice was low and steady. "If you're seeing this, they're going to try to kill you before the finals." Kara stayed still, listening. "My name doesn't matter," the hologram continued. "What matters is that I won this tournament once, years ago." But there was no glory, no prize. This isn't a sport, it's a test. They bring in the strongest from every world to see who could be a weapon in the next war. And humans. We didn't just win. We scared them. The image shifted, showing quick flashes, grainy footage of fights. A human tearing through opponents with terrifying precision, crowds frozen in silence. "They put us in cages so the audience wouldn't see what we really are," the voice went on. "The cage isn't to keep you in, it's to keep them from knowing, from remembering. The moment you win too easily, they'll try to end you before the crowd understands." The hologram leaned closer, his eyes locking onto hers as if he could see through time. "You make it to the finals. You'll have a choice. Win there. Game or break it. But either way, don't trust anyone with a judge's crest." The projection flickered and died, leaving Kara in the dim light, the weight of the device still in her hand. She looked toward the silent arena beyond her cage, the vast empty space where the galaxy's eyes would soon be fixed again. It's somewhere. Out there, the people running this tournament had already decided her fate. But as Kara set the device down and rested her hands on her knees, a faint smile curved her lips. Let them try. The arena was silent at night, the kind of silence that made every small sound feel louder than it should. Kara sat cross-legged in her cage, the dim maintenance lights casting long shadows on the floor. She could still feel the faint hum of the energy bars, steady and constant, like a quiet threat in the background. Her next fight was in the morning, but her instincts told her trouble wouldn't wait that long. The first sign was the air. It changed. The usual clean, filtered scent of the arena gave way to something faintly metallic, smell she knew from her time in Earth's underground training halls. Weapons. Then came the footsteps. More than one set, soft but urgent. Kara stayed perfectly still, letting her breathing slow until it was almost silent. The sound of a security panel unlocking echoed faintly in the hallway. The cage door slid open with a quiet hiss. No announcement. No officials. 5 figures stepped inside the arena chamber. They moved like soldiers, faces hidden by dark visors, their armor matte black to swallow the light. The leader carried a blade that shimmered with an energy edge. The others had short, compact rifles, silent kill models. One of them spoke in a voice low enough to be almost lost in the hum of the cage. Orders from the council. No human reaches the finals. Kara didn't answer. She just watched them fan out, their movements careful but tense. They were expecting resistance, but they were expecting the wrong kind. The first one stepped close, raising his blade. Kara moved before he could bring it down. She grabbed his wrist, twisted hard, and the weapon clattered to the floor. Her other hand struck his throat, not hard enough to kill, but enough to drop him gasping. She caught his falling blade in one smooth motion. The rifles came up instantly, but she was already moving. She darted low, sliding across the floor, the blade cutting through the leg armor of the second attacker. He crumpled, his rifle spinning away. The third fired silent flashes of blue light, but Kara was too close. She slammed the flat of the blade into his helmet, sending him staggering into the wall. The last two hesitated. It was all she needed. She closed the distance, twisting between them, using their own bodies to block each other's fire. A sharp kick to the side of one's knee dropped him. The final soldier swung his rifle like a club, but Kara caught it, pulled, and sent him crashing onto his back. In less than a minute, the room was filled with groans and the metallic clatter of dropped weapons. Kara stood among them, breathing steady, the blade still in her hand. She let it drop to the floor with a ringing sound. One of the soldiers' helmet cracked, looked up at her. His voice was weak but urgent. "I didn't want to. Forced us, said if we refused, we'd be next." Kara crouched beside him. "Then tell me what's waiting in the final match." His visor hid his eyes, but his tone told the truth. "It's not a fight. It's a trap. They call it the cage without walls." Kara straightened, her expression unreadable. Why she could feel the next move forming in her mind. Whatever the council was planning, she'd be ready. And when the time came, she wouldn't just survive, she'd make them regret trying. The roar of the crowd was louder than ever, echoing like rolling thunder across the arena. Kara stepped out from the tunnel into blinding light, her boots sinking slightly into the smooth arena floor. She scanned the space, expecting to see her usual cage glowing in the center. It wasn't there. Instead, the floor stretched out in all directions, an open field, flat and empty. The announcer's voice rang out with false warmth. For the final match, we offer the human her freedom. No cage, no bars, just honor, skill, and glory. The crowd cheered, but Kara didn't move. Her eyes swept the arena again, slower this time. Freedom. She could feel it, the faint hum under her boots, a vibration just a shade too steady. She'd felt something like it before, deep in a military lab on Earth. It wasn't the floor. It was power. Her gaze shifted upward to the high judge's box. The council members sat perfectly still, their eyes fixed on her like hunters watching a trap close. A gate across the arena opened. Her opponent stepped through and the cheers shifted into a wave of excitement. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with silver armor that shimmered like liquid metal. In his hands was a spear almost as long as Kara was tall. Its expression wasn't hostile of anything, it was curious. They faced each other in silence until the announcer gave the signal. Begin. The armored fighter didn't charge. He approached steadily, testing her stance with feints. Kara didn't strike either. She was listening. That hum in the floor. Every step made it louder in her bones. Then it hit her. This was the cage without walls. An energy barrier, invisible but deadly, surrounded the arena floor. If the council triggered it, it could crush anything inside in an instant. The hum was its heartbeat. Her opponent lunged, spear flashing. Kara slipped past it, letting the blade graze her arm. The sting was sharp, but her focus stayed on the hum. She moved quickly, forcing her opponent to follow, circling closer and closer to the edge. His steps grew cautious. He could feel the trap too. You're not my enemy, he said between strikes. His voice low enough the crowd couldn't hear. Kara's eyes narrowed. Then prove it. He hesitated, then gave a tiny nod. Their fight became a dance, a blur of movements that drew them toward one of the floor's corner panels. Kara timed it perfectly. Her opponent thrust high. She dropped low, slamming her palm into the panel's seam. Sparks jumped. The hum faltered. In the judge's box, one of the council members leaned forward sharply. Too late. Kara drove her boot into the panel, sending a jolt of energy back into the system. The invisible cage shimmered for a heartbeat, just long enough for the crowd to see it, and then flickered out entirely. Gasps filled the arena. The trap was gone. The match now was real. Her opponent smiled faintly, lowering his spear. The council was already on their feet, shouting orders, but Kara only straightened and looked around at the crowd. For the first time since she arrived, she stood in the arena with no bars, no hum. Nothing between her and the galaxy's eyes, and she intended to make them remember every second of it. The moment the invisible cage died, the arena seemed to change. The air felt lighter, the floor under Kara's boots no longer vibrating with that deadly hum. The crowd, which had been roaring seconds before, fell into a strange, uneasy quiet. Thousands of alien eyes locked on her, no longer looking at a prisoner in a cage, but at something far more dangerous. Kara stood in the open center of the arena, chest rising and falling, her arm still bleeding where the spear had grazed her. She didn't try to hide it. She let the blood run, red against the pale light, because she knew the crowd would see it. Humans bled, but humans kept standing. Her opponent, the silver-armored warrior, lowered his spear completely. His voice was calm, almost respectful. If I strike you down now, I'll be remembered as the one who killed the human. They'll fear me for standing with you. Either way, I lose. Kara's lips curved in a small smile, then picked the way that feels right. The warrior turned to the judge's box. The council members leaned forward, their eyes burning with command. The warrior held their gaze for a long moment, then dropped his spear onto the arena floor with a loud, deliberate clang. The sound carried in the silence like a gunshot. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The announcer's voice faltered as if his script had been ripped away. Winner, Wes, Karavasavirth. The official ruling was almost drowned out by the sound that followed, not cheers, not boos, but whispers. Thousands of low, hushed voices passing from one seat to another. Kara could make out fragments. She fights like the first one. They can't control her. She's free. That was when the fear spread. She saw it in the way the crowd leaned back, in the way guards along the walls shifted their weight, fingers tightening on weapons. It wasn't just the officials anymore. It was everyone. Kara looked up at the council's box. The highest judge was already speaking rapidly into a cum unit, his eyes fixed on her like she was a wildfire breaking loose. Guards began moving. Toward the arena floor, her opponent gave her a single, almost imperceptible nod before stepping back toward his gate. Kara stayed where she was, turning slowly to take in the faces around her predators. Soldiers, civilians, all of them realizing. Something dangerous had just happened. A human had stood unchained before the galaxy and won. The guards reached the edge of the arena. Kara met their eyes, still calm, still smiling faintly. She didn't run. She didn't fight. She just stood there and let them take her hands, because she knew the image would burn itself into the minds of everyone watching. A human in open space, no cage, no fear, no defeat. And that image, she knew, was far more dangerous to the council than anything she could do with her fists. The cell was nothing like the arena cage. This one had no glowing bars, no gaps to look through, just solid walls of reinforced alloy. Smooth and seamless, humming faintly with layered security fields. Kara sat on the narrow bench, her wrists cuffed in front of her, a single strip of dim light running along the ceiling. They had moved her quickly after the fight, rushing her through maintenance corridors so the crowd wouldn't see. The council didn't want her image burned into the galaxy any longer than it already had been. Locked deep beneath the arena, they believed the problem was solved. Kara tilted her head back against the wall, listening. She could hear muffled voices outside the door guards talking about the cancellation of the closing ceremony. The council ordering a media blackout. The word containment repeated again and again. She smiled faintly. Containment. They still didn't understand. Time passed. The voices outside faded. The silence deepened. Kara stood, testing the cuffs. Strong, too strong for normal force. Well, the wall behind her, she'd felt it vibrate faintly since they put her in here. Somewhere beyond it was machinery. Machinery meant weaknesses. She stepped back until her palms rested against the cold alloy. She closed her eyes, feeling for the rhythm of the hum. 3 seconds of steady vibration, a half-second pause. Another 3 seconds, a cycle. She timed her breath to it. When the pause came again, she drove her heel into the exact spot. The sound was dull, but the vibration shifted. Another kick harder this time. The hum stuttered. She heard the faint pop of an overloaded circuit. The lights flickered. Kara stepped back and slammed her shoulder into the weakened section. Metal groaned. The cuff spit into her wrists, but she didn't stop. Another hit, and another. On the 4th strike, the wall split with a harsh, tearing sound. Cold air rushed in from the service tunnel beyond. Boots pounded outside the cell door now, alarms starting to wail. Kara stepped through the hole into the tunnel, the broken metal edges. Scraping her arms, she didn't run. She walked, steady, deliberate, letting the sound of her escape carry through the facility. A group of guards rounded the corner ahead of her. They froze when they saw her silhouette in the flickering light, the cuff still. On her wrists, her expression calm. "You should have kept the cage," Kara said quietly. None of them moved. She stepped past them without a fight, disappearing into the deeper shadows of the tunnel system. By the time the alarms spread across the arena complex, she was already gone. Hours later, in cities across the galaxy, smuggled footage from the match began to surface, clips of her standing free, the crowd silent, the silver warrior lowering his weapon. The council tried to shut it down, but it was too late. The story was out, and everywhere it spread, one truth followed. You can put a human in a cage, but you can't make them stay there.